The Xbox One is nearing the end of its life cycle, as the new generation of consoles are approaching this holiday. Learning from their mistakes in the previous generation, Microsoft has sought out to make consumer-friendly decisions in preparation for the Xbox Series X, such as Smart Delivery, where you buy one game and play it either on your Xbox One or Xbox Series X. Backward compatibility, where a large selection of old Xbox games are playable on the newer systems with improvements to the resolution and frame rate. And recently, Project xCloud, a cloud-based service much like Google Stadia, but consumers are allowed to play a library of games on Xbox Game Pass or from their own library, provided that they are supported. If you ask me, Xbox is on the road to acquiring a majority of the market share. They have potentially the most powerful system and the most consumer-friendly services. However, there's one important sector that the Xbox platform was missing in the previous generation that makes a great video game platform even better. Games. When I say the Xbox platform is missing games, I don't mean by exclusive games. For the past 4 years, the Xbox brand lets consumers play Xbox games on their consoles and PC. As mentioned in my live service video, I said the less barriers the game has, the more people would be interested in trying it out. This service Xbox has provided is no different. With the ability to play your Xbox games on your console or PC, the argument of Xbox having no exclusives, while true, isn't the point I'm making for this video. What is the point, however, is the lack of unique Xbox games over the past 10 years. A lot of the games that came out in the span of a decade have been nothing but Halo, Gears of War, and Forza. Halo, Gears, Forza, Halo, Gears, Forza, Halo, Gears, Forza, Halo, Gears, Forza! It's insane how many Gears, Halo, and Forza games are out there. I like these games, but talk about saturation. It's almost like the platform has nothing but these 3 series, while other franchises like Fable and Crackdown are given the short end of the stick. The thing is, in the Xbox's nearly 20 years of existence, there have been multiple games that represent what the brand could bring to the Xbox Series X, from genres to style of games. There's a saying that most people live by. In order to move forward towards the future, one must look into the past to understand what went right. That is exactly what we're gonna do. Mario, Sonic, Crash, Ratchet & Clank, all of these characters, among many others, are flagship mascot characters that represented their consoles or company of origin. More importantly, some of these mascots represent the best of what a developer or publisher can offer to the platform. With the exception of Master Chief, there aren't that many mascots that represent the Xbox platform. There's the Crackdown Agent, a Forza car, the Fable dude, Banjo-Kazooie, but they haven't made a game in over a decade. Yeah, the problem with these games is that Xbox focuses on the user experience by making the player play an integral part of the story, instead of using established, well-written characters. The thing is, the Xbox platform had attempted to create a mascot in the past. That mascot was Blinx. Blinx the Time Sweeper is a platform game that was meant to rival other mascot-based games. This and its sequel were childhood favorites of mine on the Xbox platform. I love the design of the characters and the enemies. I love the different worlds and accompanying music, and I especially love the concept of utilizing time as a game mechanic. The way it works is like a match 3 puzzle game. If you want a specific time control, like let's say pause, you must grab 3 moon crystals. If you want 2, you need to grab 4 of the same kind. Simple stuff. The challenge comes from understanding how and when to use these powers. Sometimes the game requires you to be creative with controlling time. Is it a perfect game? Far from it. The story takes a backseat for 90% of the game, and worst of all, Blinx has a major difficulty spike by the time you reach the snow world. If you don't have the required amount of specific time crystals or use them at the wrong time, you're better off restarting the level or going back to previously completed levels to acquire more time powers. It's annoying to travel back and forth between levels, but that's the fun of Blinx the Time Sweeper. It's a puzzle platformer that's all about trial and error. Once you figure out where, which, and most importantly, when to use the time powers, reaching the goal feels so satisfying.
Motherfucker! Oh, no!
Reaching the goal feels so satisfying. With that said, there are several reasons why Blinx never caught on as a mascot. Now, I could just sit here and only say that the games were too outlandish for the casual audience, or that the games were never popular to begin with. But I believe the main reason was Halo. Halo Combat Evolved released on the original Xbox as the launch title, while Blinx released in October 2002. Compared to Halo's success in revolutionary first-person shooter controls, Blinx didn't do anything remarkable on the scale of Mario and Sonic aside from controlling time. In fact, Halo 2 and Blinx 2 were released on November 9th, 2004 and November 16th, 2004, 1 week apart from each other. If you were an Xbox fan during the holiday season, what game were you most likely raving to get your hands on? A sequel to a game that not only revolutionized console first-person shooters, but will change online games forever? Or a sequel to an alright game that didn't make that much of a splash? Given how history played out, I think the answer to this question is obvious. One became a household name, ranking among the greats like Mario, and the other was Blinx. While Microsoft let the Blinx trademark expire in 2015, I'm still holding out hope for the time-manipulating cat to come back one day. If there's one advantage that consoles have over PC platforms, is the couch multiplayer experience. The Xbox and the GameCube had the advantage over the PlayStation 2 by having 4 controller ports out of the box, enabling up to 4 players to play cooperatively or competitively. Nowadays, major multiplayer games are almost always exclusively online, rendering local multiplayer nearly extinct. Although, I suppose current world events are making online games look more attractive over local play. In the past 10 years, Xbox hasn't made the effort into creating offline multiplayer experiences, which is a shame, because the original Xbox thrived in this sector by offering multiplayer games such as Halo, the original Star Wars Battlefront games, and for the subject of this topic, Fusion Frenzy.
Fusion Frenzy!
At its core, Fusion Frenzy is a game where up to 4 players can duke it out in a variety of minigames. There's also a tournament mode that takes players to different locations of the game world and compete against each other and occasionally work together. I can't tell you how many hours my brother and my cousins spent playing Fusion Frenzy all those years ago. It didn't matter if we were playing through the same minigames ad nauseum. What was more important to us was how much fun we had. And that's all there is to it. There's no story, no compelling characters, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's good old multiplayer fun. In fairness, Fusion Frenzy was a launch title for the original Xbox alongside Halo. Where the game lacks in complexity, it makes up for it with style. Like Jet Set Radio, this game bathes in its near-futuristic aesthetics with a 2000s flair. Admittedly, it doesn't stand the test of time because it was a product of the times, but Fusion Frenzy is short bursts of fun with friends. This next example represents 2 different ideas that the Xbox brand was missing in the past 10 years: RPGs and Japanese support. The former can be felt with the absence of the Fable series after the Xbox 360 generation, with no replacement during the Xbox One's lifespan, while the latter can be attributed to the fact that the Xbox brand is historically known to be unsuccessful in the Japanese market compared to its competitors. While it's not the most original Japanese role-playing game, I would argue that this next game represents the best of the relationship between Xbox and Japanese developers. Blue Dragon. Written by Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of the Final Fantasy games, and Akira Toriyama, the artist for the Dragon Ball series, Blue Dragon is a Japanese RPG released only on the Xbox 360, and still does to this day. This game is the result of a collaboration between the Japanese developer Mistwalker, the Blinx publisher Rtoon, and Microsoft Game Studios. In fact, The developer Mistwalker was formed with the financial backing of Microsoft Game Studios. Blue Dragon is a turn-based RPG that doesn't really have a lot of original concepts upon first impressions. The game's art direction is reminiscent of the Dragon Quest games and Chrono Trigger, though this is due to Akira Toriyama's involvement in the project, and the gameplay is not complex, nor is it original compared to other RPGs. What do I mean by that? Let's compare Blue Dragon side by side with the original Final Fantasy VII as an example. Both games are turn-based RPGs. They utilize a character's speed to determine turn order. While each character has a specific role to fulfill, they can equip different skills or spells that expands their role better. In Final Fantasy VII's case, they can equip materia and mix and match them to enhance the spell or skill's effects, letting the player to play the game however they want. Blue Dragon does have class switching as well, but there's no complex explanation behind it.
Hey, how come we can't use this magic?
You mean healing magic?
Yeah, you and I are always doing the attacking, and Jiro's doing the healing. Maybe we each have a specific magic.
So why did I include Blue Dragon on this list if all I ever done was point out its flaws? Because unlike other carbon copy RPGs, Blue Dragon attracts players with its characters, its charm, and especially its music. Nobuo Uematsu, the composer for a majority of the Final Fantasy games, composed a soundtrack that is both familiar to RPG fans, but manages to carve out its own identity. It's a thing of beauty that only someone like Uematsu could create. With that said, there's a certain song that's clearly different than the rest. Oh, I'm not saying this track is terrible. It's just different. I unironically love this song. The more I think about it, the sooner I realize that this was a special game that wouldn't have happened had Microsoft had no involvement. It's not an original game, but it certainly had a lot of heart behind it. By the 8th generation, game development became more about playing things safe by churning out sequels to popular franchises, rather than creating new IPs. While I personally hate this development/publisher culture as it limits creativity for developers, it unfortunately makes sense from a business perspective. The last thing you want to do is create something new which has no guaranteed financial success compared to the likes of, well, Halo, Gears of War, and the Forza series. As a consequence, games like Halo 5 Guardians, State of Decay 2, and Crackdown 3 were only okay at best and painfully mediocre at worst. Which brings me to this question. What happened to the days where games are meant to be fun instead of used as a tool to create quarterly profits? That thought came across my mind when I first played Sunset Overdrive. I've talked about Sunset Overdrive multiple times over the course of this channel's life. It's even one of my favorite games of the decade, and for good reason. To give a brief explanation, Sunset Overdrive is about the player escaping Sunset City by battling against zombie-like creatures known as the OD, and surviving through the awesome apocalypse. No, I didn't make that up. What separates this zombie game over the others is Sunset Overdrive's execution of tone and gameplay. Let's compare these two elements to another Xbox exclusive zombie series, State of Decay. The State of Decay games are rooted in survival, and every choice you make impacts the flow of the narrative and the gameplay. Kind of like The Walking Dead, only more action-oriented. In Sunset Overdrive, however, the game's all action and completely disregards conventional storytelling. That's not to say the story is insultingly bad, but rather it does not follow the norms of a traditional zombie game most have grown accustomed to over the years. Instead of a gripping story that contains characters with complex morals that's tied together with gray area topics, Sunset Overdrive has this.
Now, if I was a tree-dwelling hillbilly, where would I keep my computer parts?
Gotcha, you Visco sumbitch.
I'm not from Fisco. What do I look like? An asshole?
Well, maybe not a Fizco asshole, but I'm gonna shoot you anyway, just to be sure.
Wait, listen, I'm not Fisco. I'm just here to steal computer parts from you.
How'd you think you were gonna do that when I got this here gun?
Yeah, I got guns too.
Damn! But how do I know you can use them?
I'm an American.
I can use a cocky son of a bitch like you. Looks good on camera.
Compared to contemporary zombie stories, Sunset Overdrive takes that seriousness and performs a slam dunk to the dumpster. This is translated to its gameplay. The laws of gravity don't apply, as the character can wall run, bounce on cars, grind on wires, and glide on water. As mentioned before, the fourth wall is next to non-existent as the game is aware it's a video game. And the combat, my god! I don't think there's any other modern game that capitalizes on verticality with its combat this well. Crackdown is a close second, but we don't talk about that. It's not the greatest game on the planet, but it doesn't need to be. Sunset Overdrive is a game that has a unique take for an open-world zombie game, and that's more than what I can say for other Xbox games released at the time. E3 2018 represents the most important moment in Xbox history, 5 years after the disastrous launch of the Xbox One. In that event, the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, made a commitment to the fans that he will bring gaming experiences not normally seen on the Xbox platform. In the 2 years since that promise, Xbox brought more Japanese-made games such as Yakuza, Sword Art Online, and Kingdom Hearts to the platform. Now, Yakuza Like a Dragon will become a time-limited exclusive on the Xbox platform. RPGs are coming back, as newly purchased studios such as Obsidian Entertainment and Playground Games are hard at work with a new IP and a reimagining of the Fable series, respectively. Xbox has become more open to PC games as of late, bringing their published games like Sunset Overdrive and the Master Chief Collection to the PC audience, while creating new PC-focused titles like the turn-based tactical game Gears Tactics and the upcoming Microsoft Flight Simulator to the platform. While there aren't many new and old faces that would represent Xbox, there's potential for these studios to create experiences not seen on the Xbox platform, whether it's creating a new IP or using a long-dormant franchise. The team has more work to do this coming generation, but never would I ever imagine a time where something like this would happen if the previous Xbox boss, Don Mattrick, were to remain in charge. Regardless of how you feel, there's no denying that Xbox has improved since 2013. As an Xbox fan who has stuck with them since 2005, I feel hopeful for the future of the brand. One might say that I hate Xbox because I didn't like how Gears 5 attempted to rob players' time and money. I still love the brand even after what happened because everyone can be a fan of something and be critical of their shortcomings. Not everyone has forgotten about their attempt to shoehorn a product not many wanted, the initial non-consumer friendly plans for the Xbox One, and the over-reliance of the usual suspects. The one obstacle they need to overcome is the games they'll offer on Xbox Series X. They have the power. They have the service. Now's the time for Xbox to deliver to gamers the new experiences we've been missing for nearly a decade.